Franklin Expedition, the greatest Arctic mystery ever solved? Imagine setting sail with the most advanced ships of your era. You have enough food for 3 years, the best technology money can buy, a hand-picked crew of 129 experienced men, and a mission that could make history forever. Yet within just a few years, every single man vanishes. No survivors. No rescue. No explanation. For more than 170 years, the fate of these explorers remained one of the world's greatest mysteries. What happened to Sir John Franklin and his crew? Did they starve? Were they poisoned? Did they resort to cannibalism? Or did something even more terrifying await them in the frozen Arctic wilderness? Today, we are diving into the chilling true story of the Franklin Expedition. Disaster so mysterious that it inspired countless books, documentaries, and legends. And by the end of this video, you will discover how modern science finally uncovered the horrifying truth. The year was 1845. The British Empire ruled much of the world. Its navy was unmatched, and one challenge remained unconquered: the Northwest Passage. This legendary sea route through the Arctic promised a shorter path between Europe and Asia. Finding it would revolutionize global trade. Many explorers had tried. Many had failed. But Britain believed it finally had the right man for the job. His name was Sir John Franklin. At 59 years old, Franklin was already a celebrated Arctic explorer. He had survived previous expeditions under brutal conditions. His reputation for endurance made him the perfect candidate. The British Admiralty equipped Franklin with 2 state-of-the-art ships, HMS Erebus and HMS Terror. Ironically, those names would later become haunting symbols of one of history's greatest maritime tragedies. The vessels were specially modified for Arctic exploration. They featured reinforced hulls to withstand ice pressure, steam engines powered by converted locomotive technology, and enough provisions to support the crew for years. Everything seemed prepared for success. No one could have imagined that neither ship would ever return. The departure. On May 19, 1845, the expedition departed England. Crowds gathered to cheer. Families waved goodbye. The mood was optimistic. This was not viewed as a dangerous gamble. It was considered Britain's next great triumph. The expedition stopped briefly in Greenland to gather supplies. After that, the ships entered the Arctic. That would be the last time Europeans saw most of the crew alive. Several whaling ships encountered Franklin's expedition in Baffin Bay during the summer of 1845. The explorers appeared healthy and confident. Then they disappeared into the ice, and the world heard nothing from them again. Years of silence. At first, nobody worried. Arctic expeditions often lasted several years. Communication was impossible once ships entered the polar regions. But as time passed, concern grew. Then concern became alarm. By 1848, Franklin's wife, Lady Jane Franklin, was pushing the British government to launch search missions. Dozens of rescue expeditions eventually entered the Arctic. Some searched by sea, others crossed frozen landscapes on foot. None found the missing men. Yet these rescue missions produced strange clues. Inuit communities reported encounters with starving white men. Some spoke of ships trapped in ice. Others described desperate groups dragging boats across frozen terrain. Many British officials dismissed these accounts, but they would later prove crucial. The first major discovery. In 1959, a search expedition led by Francis McClintock uncovered the first major breakthrough. On King William Island, searchers discovered a small cairn containing a written message. This became the most important document in the entire mystery. The note revealed shocking information. The ships had become trapped in ice in September 1846. For nearly 2 years, the crew remained stranded. Then disaster struck. Sir John Franklin died on the 11th of June, 1847. By April 1848, the surviving crew abandoned both ships. The note recorded that 24 officers and crew members had already died. The remaining 105 survivors, began a desperate trek south. Their goal was reaching civilization hundreds of miles away. None succeeded. Before we continue and uncover what happened during those final terrifying months, take a moment to like the video and subscribe to the channel. We explore real historical mysteries, maritime disasters, and unexplained events that continue to fascinate researchers today. And trust me, you will not want to miss the chilling evidence we are about to discuss. The horrifying journey south. Imagine the situation. You are stranded in one of the harshest environments on Earth. Temperatures plunge far below freezing. Food supplies are running low. Your leader is dead, and you are hundreds of miles from rescue. The surviving men loaded supplies into heavy boats mounted on sleds. Then they began dragging them across ice and tundra. It was a nearly impossible task. Search teams later discovered abandoned equipment scattered along their route. Some items made sense. Others were baffling. The explorers carried silverware, books, personal possessions, even decorative items. Many historians believe the crew struggled to adapt psychologically to survival conditions. Instead of focusing entirely on essentials, they carried remnants of their former lives. Every extra pound made their journey harder, and every mile drained precious energy. One discovery was especially disturbing. A lifeboat found far inland contained two skeletons and a collection of supplies. The men had clearly died while attempting to escape. Their destination remained far beyond reach. The cannibalism controversy. For years, Inuit witnesses reported something shocking. They claimed some of the starving sailors resorted to cannibalism. Victorian Britain refused to believe it. The idea was considered offensive. British naval officers were viewed as disciplined gentlemen. Many officials dismissed the Inuit testimony entirely. But science would eventually reveal a darker truth. In the 1980s and 1990s, researchers examined human remains recovered from the expedition. The bones told a horrifying story. Scientists found cut marks consistent with butchering. Some bones showed evidence of breakage used to extract marrow. These were classic signs of survival cannibalism. The evidence was undeniable. The starving men had reached a point where they consumed their dead companions. It was not a legend. It was not speculation. It was reality. The Franklin expedition had descended into one of the most desperate survival situations ever recorded. Lead poisoning theory. Another mystery remained. Why did things collapse so catastrophically? One theory focused on lead poisoning. The expedition carried thousands of canned food containers. At the time, canning technology was relatively new. Researchers discovered unusually high levels of lead in some crew remains. Lead poisoning can cause confusion, weakness, poor judgment, and physical decline. Some historians argued that contaminated food gradually impaired the crew's ability to survive. For years, this became the dominant explanation. But newer research suggests the answer may be more complicated. Lead exposure probably contributed to the disaster. However, many sailors of that era already had elevated lead levels. The poisoning alone likely was not enough to explain the expedition's complete collapse. Instead, experts now believe multiple factors combined to create catastrophe. Starvation, scurvy, extreme cold, diseases, exhaustion, and possibly lead exposure. Together, they formed a deadly combination. The ships remain lost. Despite decades of investigation, one mystery persisted. Where were the ships? Erebus and Terror had vanished. Finding them became one of archaeology's greatest challenges. Searches continued for generations. Technology improved. Maps became more accurate, yet the vessels remained hidden beneath Arctic waters. Many believed they might never be found. Then came an extraordinary breakthrough. The discovery of Erebus. In September 2014, researchers achieved what many thought impossible. The wreck of HMS Erebus was finally located. It rested beneath the icy waters of the Canadian Arctic. The discovery stunned historians worldwide. After nearly 170 years, one of the lost ships had been found. The wreck was remarkably well preserved. Cold Arctic conditions had protected many artifacts. Archaeologists suddenly had access to an underwater time capsule from 1845. But the surprises were not over. Years later, another discovery shocked the world. The discovery of Terror. In 2016, explorers found HMS Terror, and its condition was astonishing. The ship appeared almost frozen in time. Cabins remained intact. Windows survived. Furniture still occupied some rooms. It looked as though the crew had only recently departed. The preservation was so extraordinary that many experts compared it to discovering a Victorian ghost ship. These wrecks provided crucial evidence. They suggested the ship survived much longer than previously believed. Some researchers now think small groups may have returned to the vessels after abandoning them. The final chapter of the expedition may have been even more complex than historians once imagined. What really happened? Today, historians have assembled the most complete picture possible. The Franklin expedition became trapped in ice during 1846. The ships remained immobilized for years. Food supplies dwindled. Disease spread. Franklin died. Crew members began dying in increasing numbers. The survivors eventually abandoned the ships. They attempted to march south. Extreme weather, starvation, and illness devastated them. Some resorted to cannibalism. One by one, they perished across the Arctic landscape. No one survived. It was not a single catastrophic event. It was a slow-motion disaster unfolding over several years. A tragedy measured not in moments, but in endless months of suffering. Legacy of the Franklin expedition. Despite its tragic outcome, the Franklin expedition transformed Arctic exploration. The extensive search missions mapped vast regions previously unknown to Europeans. New geographic discoveries emerged from the rescue efforts. Lessons learned influenced future polar expeditions, and the mystery itself captured imaginations for generations. Books were written, movies were made. Researchers dedicated entire careers to solving the puzzle. Even today, archaeological work continues around the wrecks. New artifacts and clues are still being recovered. The story is not completely finished, and perhaps it never will be, because the Franklin expedition represents something larger than a maritime disaster. It symbolizes humanity's relentless desire to explore the unknown. Sometimes that ambition leads to triumph, sometimes it leads to tragedy, but always leaves behind stories that refuse to be forgotten. Conclusion. More than 108 years after Sir John Franklin sailed into the Arctic, his expedition remains one of history's most haunting mysteries. A mission, launched with confidence, ended in unimaginable suffering. Yet through archaeology, science, and persistence, we have finally uncovered much of what happened. The frozen Arctic kept its secrets for generations, but not forever. And that is what makes the Franklin expedition one of the most fascinating true stories ever told. If you enjoyed this deep dive into one of history's greatest unsolved mysteries, hit the like button, subscribe, and turn on notifications so you never miss future episodes. And tell us in the comments, what historical mystery should we investigate next? Thanks for watching, and we will see you in the next video.